Hey guys, what's up? So, yeah, I promise for those of you who don't want me to keep on hammering on, religious topics, so I know a lot of you guys seem to like that. This will be the last, well, I shouldn't say for a while because it makes it sound like it's a really long time. I'm not going to keep doing these in a row. This is going to be the last one for a bit, and I'll do some other ones that I might jump back to it, but whatever. This is just something that occurred to me after I put up the last one, and it's basically the whole, thing between reason and faith when it comes to religion. Now, the reason why I was thinking about this is because one thing that I tend to hear these days, or at least I sometimes see videos on YouTube claiming this, and it amuses me to no end, which I'm going to be getting into a moment, is how when it comes to things like creationism or religion or, just simply believing in a God necessarily, I sometimes see videos or I hear people say that it is the most logical thing to do. That it's more logical to believe in many of the things in various religions, no matter how far-fetched they are. It's more logical to believe in these things than to, go with the evidence that suggests that none of the stuff is true. Now, I could just simply make a whole video showing how this is absolutely ridiculous, but other people have done this for me, and I think anybody who's willing to stop and think about this for at least just a few minutes will realize just how insane that statement is. Rather, what amuses me is the fact that there is the need for them to say that it's more logical to have faith in these things, rather than, go with a more evidence-based approach. The reason why I find this hilarious is because if any of the religions, particularly in the Christian persuasion, ever bothered to look at the history of the development of their religion, they would realize that there was a time when they were actually arguing the opposite, when they were actually arguing against the use of reason. And the reason for this, excuse the expression, is simple, because they saw it as a threat to their faith. We can start with a man that you guys probably already know about, Martin Luther. Martin Luther, and I'm not talking about Martin Luther King, shut up. Martin Luther is well known by people as the one who helped to start the Protestant movement. And he would be the one to found the Lutheran Church. Most people who've heard of the name tend to know him for that, and putting up, posting up the 92 Articles of Faith, I believe? I could be wrong. Was it 92? Ugh. I am really sorry that I'm suddenly forgetting this. Now I'm feeling like a moron. No, it was 95. Sorry. The 95 theses that he had nailed up on that, what is he, posted up on the church door? Okay. All right. Yeah, he nailed a copy of it to the church door. I just looked it up right now, just to make sure, just make sure I know, I got everything right. Most people know him for that, and his critique that the main Catholic Church was, losing their way, so to speak, and getting corrupt, and they were pretty much fucking things up when it came to faith. Again, most people know him for that. Well, a lot of people don't know him for, however, besides his growing anti-Semitism, which was another funny thing to himself, because he actually started out liking the Jews until he tried to convert them, was his argument against the use of rationality, and him stating that faith and rationality are two opposite sides, and that you could not use, like, it was the enemy of faith. People don't know him for that, but that's actually something that he argued. If I could look up a quote of his, which I find to be rather interesting, and I find it to be rather, it's pretty damn interesting. Let's just put it that way. And it's rather revealing onto the thought of religion at the time, and even to this day with some people. He happened to have written, "All the articles of our Christian faith, which God has revealed to us in his word, are in presence of reason sheerly impossible, absurd, and false." He also stated that reason in no way contributes to faith, for reason is the greatest enemy that faith has. it never comes to the aid of spiritual things. Granted, he, would later on kind of contradict himself with that, talking about when, later on, says that reason doesn't go against faith. And it was probably when he realized just how ridiculous that statement was. But you have to realize that the main reason why he said that is because people, especially at the time period he was living in, who started, focusing on things like reason and logic to try to deduce the world around them, were beginning to come up with findings that were going against what his religion was saying about the world around them. This tends to threaten those who happen to cling on to that worldview. So naturally, he and many others like him started to attack the very thing that was exposing their ignorance of what was around them: reason and logic. Sort of like these days, how religious people are now railing against science, saying how it doesn't seem to know what the hell it's talking about, or how it's going against their religion, that we need to do something about it. Or how, and yet at the same breath trying to say that they're better suited to being able to explain the world than scientists are. For instance, look at the creationists. He wasn't the only one doing this, though. But what I also find interesting is that later on, there started being a bit of wrestling going on between, with certain people on whether reason should be attached to faith or not. Some people are basically saying, no, we have to stick with faith. And other people going, look, we can't, we can't separate the two. I'm thinking the ones who were realizing you couldn't separate the two were the more educated among the religious leaders, the ones who had a little bit more of a formal education and understood how useful a tool that reason and logic is. I like to make an aside, by the way, to point out that when I'm saying that a useful tool, reason and logic is, the reason why I stress that it is a tool is because it is, again, that is what it is. It's not something that is necessarily innate with human beings. I've stated this before. Human beings are capable of rationality, but they're not by nature rational creatures. Your instincts, the very things that drive you to do things that without you thinking about it, aren't driven by reason. They're driven by passion. They're driven by primal urges. They're not driven by reason and rationality. Otherwise, you wouldn't need to have to be taught or how to be trained how to do things like, for instance, control your temper or control your urges, especially when dealing with other people. Rationality is something that has to be taught. It has to be something that's you have to be trained to be able to make rational decisions, to learn how to think and think things through logically. Whenever I'm seeing people say, are talking about, yeah, human beings are rational creatures, so I'm more rational than you, it cracks me up, because it's like, you probably, especially with the way you're boasting about it, you probably are the least rational person around, especially if you're going to be going around saying that human beings, oh, yeah, we're naturally rational. No, you're not. Don't believe me? Watch a wrestling match sometime and look at the audience. Anyway, to get back to the topic at hand, and forgive me if I'm looking up a few notes, because I got a lot to try to sum up. There soon started being a lot of back and forth within the church and within the Christian religion on how useful reason was when it came to faith. And, you had some people basically arguing against it. And then you had other people being saying that, oh, well, it's useful, but faith is higher than reason ultimately. They were trying to have their cake and eat it too. They'll say, no, faith is you can have it both, and reason is good, and faith is sort of like being dictated with certain reason, but faith is ultimately higher than reason. I'm not kidding. If you look this up, you'll see people trying to make that argument. I believe it was Johann Baptist Franzelin who had basically argued that. He says, but although faith is above reason, so basically saying that faith is better than reason, it says, nevertheless, between faith and reason, no true dissension can ever exist, since the same God who reveals mysteries and infuses faith has bestowed upon the human soul the light of reason. Moreover, God cannot deny himself, nor ever contradict truth with truth. But a vain appearance of such a contradiction arises chiefly from this, that either the dogmas of faith have not been understood and interpreted according to the mind of the church, or deceitful opinions are considered as determinations of reason. Therefore, every assertion contrary to the truth illuminated by faith we define to be altogether false. So, he's trying to find a way with that statement to marry the two, basically saying that there is no way the two can be at odds. Okay, that's cool. But notice how he's still trying to make it slick with the very first statement, faith is higher than reason. Which, if you're going to follow that to the conclusion, is basically saying that you can be, so if you're not going with reason whatsoever, but you're going strictly with faith, then you're fine. Because it's ultimately higher. Nice try. Nice try. Though, of course, he's arguing, saying that, the contradictions between the two don't really exist. That it's, it's BS to suggest that the findings of faith are different from the findings of reason, because they both happen to illuminate the truth, as it were. And God, of course, would not contradict truth within truth. But this is assuming that faith automatically leads to the truth, which in and of itself is a statement of faith. What evidence do you have that faith automatically leads to truth? That question is not answered. It's just that gut feeling of, no, it is the truth, which they're going to have to say. After all, they're, arguing for their religion. So they're not going to say that faith could sometimes lead to the wrong answer, or lead to some type of falsehood, or mislead you into thinking something that's not true. No, faith automatically leads to truth, but you really don't have much evidence of that. Rationality and reason, on the other hand, has a systematic process of trying to determine whether what they're getting to is the truth or not. It doesn't always work. There are tons of examples of logical puzzles that you can come up with that leads you to the most ridiculous conclusion. But but the fact that it has a solid methodology is what makes people stick with it. Nonetheless, faith doesn't even have that. It just simply works off an assumption that's given to you, and then say that, well, that's the way it is, so have faith. There's no real grounding with that. And so trying to reconcile the two becomes an interesting adventure at best. And that's the thing that cracks me up when you later on say, oh yeah, these particular, religion and all that, that's the most logical, that's the most reasonable position. People who say that are ignorant of the constant debate that's been going on between, the use of reason and logic within religion, and completely ignoring the people who have actually argued against it, since they knew full well what would happen if somebody was thinking about their religion logically and using rationality to try to figure out and try to explain the very things that religion was saying about the world around them and about human nature and God and the nature of God and whether there is one or not. They understood the problems this would lead to. And so either they try to come up with some really interesting arguments trying to marry the two with some crazy gymnastics of the mind, or they just outright rejected reason, like Martin Luther did. For this today, to now see people going, oh, well, this is the more rational position, it's hilarious. It just goes to show just how ignorant they are of how their religion developed and the arguments that other people have been trying to use to keep it going, which is not surprising considering how many religious people are completely ignorant of the religion to begin with. In my country itself, it is not hard to find, say, a Christian who has no idea what's actually in his Bible, his or her Bible. They'll, talk about how great it is, but as soon as you quote something in it that's inconvenient, they're like, where'd you get that from? I thought you read the damn book. But then one may be asking the question, well, what changed? How is it that somebody, before, when religions may have had a problem with reason, would later on say that, oh, their position is the most reasonable position to have? Well, besides straight up ignorance, it's also just simply that we're now living in an age where reason and logic and rationality are more useful for surviving in today's world than just straight up faith. I've used this example before ad nauseum, but you wouldn't exactly go buy a car just on faith now, would you? You go to a Ford dealership and they happen to say our car is the best because our brochure says it's the best. You're just going to raise an eyebrow at the guy or laugh at him or just snort and leave. They're not going to just take it on faith that what this guy's telling you is the truth, that it is the best car. You're going to double check. You're either going to look at the car yourself if you've got knowledge of what makes a good car and what doesn't. You'll look up consumer reports. You'll compare prices. You'll compare features. You'll see what other people are saying about cars before you finally come to a conclusion. This day and age, you sort of need to do these type of things to make sure that you are not, gonna have make a really bad decision. So just simply going through life based on faith isn't going to help you. And it's more obvious these days than it was back then. Though even back then, quite frankly, you needed to go with a logical approach on being able to go through day-to-day living. But since they happen to live in a time period where religion will happen to have had a stronger hold on society, faith had more value. These days, everyday existence, faith doesn't have that much value. Sure, within certain religious communities, it seems to have plenty of value. And people happen to say that it's one of the biggest virtues. People say it's one of the best virtues you can have all the time. But if we're going to be looking at it at a practical standpoint, just living your life day to day, you begin to realize that it doesn't really have much value in terms of just basically surviving. Hell, I'll even go so far as to say is that it doesn't really have much value in terms of actually living a life of happiness, being content with the life that you're living and actually finding a path that suits you. Even that you can't necessarily go just by faith. You have to basically take the time to know yourself and rationally look at what you want out of life and then go about making it happen or go about living that life. Just simply taking things on faith that one day things are just going to fall on your lap to live a happy life doesn't really work that way. So no matter how much, to get back to why people are then trying to associate reason with the religion in these days and times, since it's more and more obvious that logic and reason and rationality are more important, it would be foolish then to go around saying that you don't need those things. And so these days, people try to justify whatever decisions they make or whatever life path they make by saying, oh, well, this just makes the most sense. Oh, this is the most rational position, no matter how irrational it may be. But they'll say it because, well, we happen to place more value on that particular aspect of ourselves. We have to put more value in rationality, no matter what we do, even if we're just going to say it's rational. And we just use it casually, whether or not we even know what it truly means to be rational or what it truly means to look at something with a sense of reason. It's sort of the same way that people will, blasely say, oh, that's a scientific fact. Whether it's a scientific fact or not, they just find that word scientific justifies whatever thing that they're saying, and that's enough for them. Whether or not it is or not, well, this is a scientific fact, so there. Like it's some type of gospel truth, which, I thought science wasn't supposed to be about gospel truth. It was supposed to be like looking at evidence and seeing what the evidence tells you and then say that, well, based on these findings, it looks like this is what it's telling us. But people these days are kind of throwing out more like declarations of truth, which kind of wrong. But people are doing the same thing with reason. And the religious are jumping on board with that, especially the more intellectual of the religious who are trying to justify their continuing faith in their religion. And I can't blame them. I mean, people are going to try to rationalize things all the time, no matter how crazy it may be. You find murderers, trying to rationalize and justify their particular activities. They're completely irrational, but they'll try to find some way to argue for it. Say anything you're going to be holding dear to, anything that's going to be a major part of your life, that's what you're going to do. And so it makes sense when you look at it that way, that the religious will then say that their particular belief system is the most rational. But again, that makes me laugh because there was a time period when they would be arguing the opposite, saying that no, rationality is wrong. It's a sin. It goes against faith. I would, invite any religious person who, at the very least, is wondering what the hell I'm talking about, even if they're offended, to at least look up what I'm talking about. Look up the ongoing debate about faith and rationality, faith and reason. See what people in the past, religious leaders in the past, had to say about it. Because you had people all over the map when it came to what value reason had in a religion. Again, you had people who were outright against it. And I find, to be honest, I happen to find those guys to be probably the more honest because they understood what was at stake once you introduce reason into things. Suddenly, you're going to have to throw a lot of things out in your religion. And that can be a rather dangerous proposition if you're trying to say that your religion has the ultimate truth. Well, if you're saying that this ultimate truth got this wrong and this is not exactly correct, then how truthful is it? You start basically poking holes in that solid foundation of yours. But again, you got people who are just like, fuck rationality, fuck reason, stick with faith, just believe. Then you got some other people saying that, no, faith is based on reason, and then have to go through all types of mental gymnastics to try to, prove that. And then you got some people kind of falling a little bit in the middle. Well, They're not exactly opposed, but you don't really need this one. Faith is a little bit better, and all these type of weird things going on. But all that just basically means that just to simply then go, oh yeah, faith is the most rational. You can't just say that, not without looking at the history behind your religion, what they had to say about rationality to begin with. So what I gotta say about that. And now I'm not too sure if I even had a point with all that, but it was just something that I've been thinking about. So next video, I don't know what it's going to be. It's probably either going to be another. I might put up the Dark Souls stuff for less. I got so much footage on that right now. So much gameplay footage. I might put up something on that as my next video, or I might do the Chinese sword video thing that I've been wanting to do. We'll see which one comes first. Whichever one comes first, the other one will come next. So catch you guys later. Hey guys, what's up? Doing another one. And for those of you who stupid message thing here is telling me that there's no audio, but it's lied to me before. So I'm going to try this again. Here we go.